Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. Hope your day is beautiful. Hope the sun is shining, the birds are singing. Hope the wind is at your back. From the dawn of time, humanity has leaned on nature's gifts, plants, fungi, the marrow of animals, extracting what we needed slowly, clumsily, and at great cost. But every age brings a new alchemy. And in our age, a new architect has emerged. Sher is that architect, a biochemist forged in the crucible of UC Davis and sharpened by the strategic fire of UC San Diego. He co founded CB Therapeutics, not just to make molecules, but to rewrite the very way we think about making. Where others see scarcity, Sher sees abundance encoded in the language of life itself. Sure, congratulations, man. I'm super stoked to talk to you, man. How you doing?
Thank you. No, thank you for having me here, and thank you for that amazing introduction. I'm super excited to be here and then talk to you today. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for asking. Been having some really interesting conversations, and they seem to all be, for me, it's, man, I'm just immersed in the world of psychedelics. Like, I really love what they do for healing. I love what they do for optimization. I love what they do for relationships, clarity of mind. And so I'm super stoked to hang out with you, man. We
Thanks.
were, um, we were both at psychedelic science, and then at the Shark Tank event, man. That's where I first heard of you.
Yes, yes. Awesome.
That was epic, man. Let me give you some background. Why don't I throw it back to you, man? So maybe you can explain a little bit of what you're actually up to.
So sure. So we, for the last 10 years, we have been working with developing technologies that allow us to produce things like psychedelics, cannabinoids from cannabis, and mostly focusing on rare molecules from different types of therapeutic, starting ingredients that are expensive or that are rare to make or that may have contaminations like heavy metals or pesticides. So the idea was, how do we make these things, these molecules that are really good for humanity and people and health, but without having to, let's say, pay like $250,000 a kilogram for a product, which is the case for some of these
Yeah.
ingredients. So, my background is in biochemistry, and then I got an MBA from, UC San Diego, and I worked for some cannabis labs. I even founded one near Santa Rosa. It's called CB Labs. It's another company which does lab testing up in the Bay Area. So I've always been focused on quality and sort of like the market side. I've tested products for heavy metals, for pesticides and other ingredients, purity. And it seems to me that for most industries like cannabis, now even mushrooms and others, there are these other things like heavy metals and other ingredients that shouldn't be there. So I've always focused on coming from an angle of purity, and so that was my background. Jacob who's the other co-founder. He is
Yes.
actually my roommate from undergrad, and he went on to go get a PhD from UC Berkeley. So while I was up in Berkeley, actually setting up CB Labs up in near Santa Rosa, we actually met for a beer at a bar, and I was telling Jacob that, hey, listen, I have this opportunity where and this idea that we can make cannabinoids through something that would allow us to bypass, a 4 month growth cycle. It would allow us to not worry about pesticides and heavy metals and plant growth regulators and things like that. And by chance, Jacob was finishing his PhD in bioengineering with yeast. So he was telling me about his project. So that's where the inception of the idea came up. That I understand the quality side, the customer facing side. You understand the bioengineering, and that's when we decided, hey, we have to figure out a way to use yeast, for example, which you can make beer with, but to be able to make different kinds of molecules. So initially we set out to make CBD. At that time, I remember CBD was very expensive. So we're like, let's do it. So we were successfully able to develop 12 or 13 different cannabinoids in yeast. Uh, and then from that point on, we got interested in psychedelics previously because of our own experience with psychedelics. Funny enough, Jacob and I did shrooms together for the first time as well back in undergrad. And we went to the UC Davis Arboretum. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Arboretum. It's one of the largest collections of plants in the world. I think it's spread over a bunch of acres, hundreds of acres. So it was a very amazing and unique experience. So, we actually made psilocybin just almost as a hobby initially. Like there was no idea, there was no psychedelics industry. So it was like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we made a strain of yeast that could like eat sugar and brew it into psilocybin? And once we did that, we were like, okay, well, we don't know what to do with this now. Like, we have this yeast that produces psilocybin, psilocin, baocysteine, norbaeocystine, all the major ingredients you find in psilocybin cubensis mushrooms, but we don't know what to do with it. So at that point, we're like, you know what? Let's just put out a press release and see what kind of attention we get. And in fact, that's what we did. So, we put out a press release, and I remember within 2 weeks, we got a call from one of the largest companies in the space. And they said, hey, we're very interested in what you're doing, but we don't invest in companies that also have like other arms, like cannabis products, like health and wellness and nutrition. We're only a psychedelics only company. So we will introduce you to our main investor. And then they did. And I think over one Zoom call, well, I mean, the guy, we were raising money at that point, the whole thing happened. So then, obviously we realized like, this psychedelics thing is bigger than the cannabis side. And we're very happy to see how, the market and everything is emerging.
Man, that sounds like a movie. I would totally watch that movie. I would read that book, man. That's epic.
People tell me that. People tell me that one day I should get like a movie commissioned on the story. So maybe I will, we'll see.
But I feel like it's like just the beginning. You know what I mean? Like that's like the first phase of the movie, man. Now we're moving into like, oh shoot, let's see what happens right over on this side.
Right.
It's interesting to see, man. I got our first question chiming in over here. This one's coming to us from Ronga. What's up, Ronga, my friend in Ontario? He says, when you look at biosynthesis, do you see it more as a technology or as a language of life? And what new stories could humanity write in that language?
That's a great question. Honestly, I'm impressed because, yeah, I think this is, biotechnology is a very new technology, right? I mean,
Right.
we really know about biotechnology no more than 50 years. And I would say modern biotechnology is no more than 25 years old. And, you see the compression
Yeah.
of pricing and things. Like, for example, the first DNA that was sequenced was like, $1 billion, right? And now it's like a couple $100 you can get your genome sequenced. So
Yep.
I think biotechnology, I mean, people think AI is going to change the world, and it is.
Yeah.
But my personal belief is that biotechnology has the potential to do a lot more than even AI does. I think we're not really even in the era of biotechnology yet, right? So I mean, just like how computers were discovered,
Yeah.
like 50, 60 years ago, and now we're really getting into AI and all this stuff. I think the real new field or whatever is going to emerge out of biotech, I think that has still yet to manifest. So yeah, I think biotech has the potential to rewire and change everything. I mean, you think about pollution, that's not going to be a thing. Like just recently, I was reading up on how they have discovered these species of bacteria and funguses that eat plastics, and that's like one of the things. So with biology, you learn that you can evolve organisms, right? So you can almost make
Mm.
them go through evolution, but in an accelerated path in the lab, right? So you could evolve organisms that eat trash, right? That absorb all the harmful gases, that can create natural products in abundance, right? I mean, why are we making these molecules in yeast? So part of it obviously is the cost and the purity, but the other is also like, think about like this, right? You have a farm that grows cannabis. Great thing to do. Obviously, I've grown
Yep.
cannabis before. I'm a big proponent of that. I think there's a place for every type of technology. I think there's always a place for the natural thing. There's a place for extracts, and there's a place for something more advanced, right? And
Yeah.
they can all coexist together. But if you think about it from a perspective of how much time, I mean, how much water are you going to have to give that cannabis plant
Yep.
to grow? How many hours of labor is going to have to go into that, right? I mean, these are all associated costs in some way. Like you're putting on water every day that is being transported by like a truck that uses gas or gasoline, right? So all these things are interconnected. So I think biotech is going to be the dominant manufacturing method in the future because it is the most efficient way to produce resources.
Man, that's so well put. It's so
I hope I
interesting. I see
didn't
it.
go on
I
a
see
tangent
it.
here. I have a tendency to go on tangents, but
Dude, it's
hope
beautiful.
that answers the question.
to go on the long ones, man. I feel like an eternal student, man. I get to talk to so many cool people and like just soak it all in. It's so
So,
interesting, sure. Like
right.
I just finished talking to a girl in Switzerland that's using neurons instead of microchips. They're trying to figure out a way to use neurons to like be the processor. And I'm like, holy shit, man. Like it's here. Biotech. You see this merger of science and
Right.
biology. And it has been on the outskirts for a period of time, but you're really seeing it come together now. Like it is the most efficient way. Like why wouldn't we do the biomimicry of the body?
And like I said, I mean, I think like the big revolution or like the big, like since computers, right? There were
Right?
computers, the Intel inside. Now it's all about the new processor,
Right.
graphics cards. Now, I mean, you remember back in the day, everybody was like, "I have this build computer,"
Yeah, totally.
and that was like the main conversation, right? And now I think the conversations you have with people are way different. Now it's about, hey, I used Chat GPT to do this and that. I mean, so in that way, it's like a fundamental paradigm shift, and I think you see that in every industry. Happen with cars, happen with
Yeah.
computers, but I think the real paradigm shift with biotech, I think, is yet to come, and I think
Yeah.
that's going to be, we're going to be in a place and that's why I think that as humanity we think of like the worst that could happen, which is our job, right? In some ways,
Totally.
be efficient in life, and like as if you're a business owner, you have to sort of plot out all the possibilities, right? That doesn't mean you actually believe them, but it's good to have that understanding. But I think that, I mean, assuming that things go the way they do, I have no doubt that in 100 years from now, even, or maybe not 100, I would say in like a few hundred years from now, we will get to a point that I think virtually most diseases and issues will be solved. Most manufacturing will be done this way. For example, we just made uh, animal-free leather. Right, it's another one of the prototypes that we've developed. Of course, we still have a long way to go. We also made animal fats that are traditionally found in bacon, but now they're made in yeast. So the question is, if you're a vegetarian or you don't believe in, like, let's say, eating pork, or you don't eat animals, period, or something like that, can you consume that product, right? So we were talking to a food company that makes animal protein. You know how they have like those burgers, Impossible Burgers?
Yeah.
So, so we were obviously doing some business development. We came across a company that said, "Hey, we have a protein that is similar to like the bacon protein, but the problem is the product doesn't taste good because most of the flavor in a meat product is actually the fat,
Yeah.
right? Which is why Wagyu and all that." So they were asking us, "Can you develop a strain of yeast?" So what we ended up doing is we ended up testing first bacon fat, right? So we had to
Okay.
do extensive tests. First, we had to make bacon, which we were obviously really good at, and then we had to test it to see what is the breakdown, right? Like what particular fatty acids are in there, what is the concentration, what are the ratios of those, and then we had to reverse engineer that into the yeast, and we were successfully able to do that, right? So it's also a very interesting application, you could say, of biotech.
Man, you know, there's a lot of like homebrew enthusiasts, and a lot of home growers. Like I'm a big proponent of growing your own if you can do it, and it's not usually not that difficult. There's even some extraction methods that I'm familiar with, but some are a little trickier than others. But there's information out there, and they're totally doable. Is the process that you guys use the process that you're using? Is that something that could be like a hobbyist could do once they figured it out, or is it a difficult process? Do you see it maybe moving into the mainstream the same way kind of grow kits are?
I think if you're a hobbyist, you could still do what we do, but you would have to have like millions of dollars, right? I mean, if you have like 10 million to spare, just
Right, that takes
yeah,
it out.
I think you could do it. Uh, because you would have consultants, you would have
Right.
labs that send out work to be done. So as long as you have the money, you can make it happen. But aside from that, unfortunately, no.
Damn it.
One of the things that one of the concepts that I came up with, I'm essentially a dreamer. I like to obviously think about and come
Yeah.
up with things, and was like, hey, maybe one day we can make, like, how they have these like espresso machines where you put like a little pod in, and even now they have like the brew kits for like making your own
Right.
wine at home, right? Or grow your own mushroom. So I was thinking, if technology gets to that point, it's probably not going to happen today, but one day, maybe not too far, we could make like a have your own brew home kit where we could send you the pod, and that has like the starting material for the yeast that can make, let's say, psilocin or
Yeah.
DMT or whatever you want, or or ibogaine, or I mean all these different things, any drug. So you can just put it in the pod, you can press go, and then it brews it, and in about a 5 day period, you get yeast that makes it, and then it extracts the product, and you get homemade psychedelics, right? How cool would that be?
I think you're gonna have some pharmaceutical companies upset with you.
Right, right, yeah. Maybe you won't even see me after because I'll be gone, right?
But that would revolutionize medicine as well. Like, think if people, like you said, if people didn't have to source from a lab that cost, $10,000 for a gram of something, man, that could revolutionize treatment and get people the health and the wellness that they need, man. That could be revolutionary.
I personally think that pharmaceutical companies are not built with that business model, right? I mean, their business model is you buy a pill from us, a pill a day, so we make $1 a day. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, from that perspective, I think big pharma is afraid of the
Sure.
potential of, I mean, for some psychedelics, I've seen data. I mean, this is not just, and when I say data, data is not me and my 8 friends that took something in a garage overnight, and their 15 other friends. I'm talking about scientific data from Stanford and other places that definitively show that there are certain psychedelics that completely reverse things like brain damage or trauma or particular issues that people have. So this is real. I mean, the
Yeah.
point is this is real. There's real data. It's of course in its infancy, but there is real information there, which makes you which goes with the point that that's why they have, let's say, a legalization sort of program for things like cannabis and not for heroin, right?
Yeah.
Because there is some data that shows that. But with psychedelics, I think it's going to be much bigger.
Yeah. I do too. I'm so thankful for I'm so thankful for the underground. Like, there's so much happening in the underground where people are able to source it at a decent price. And you got to go through the seeking aspect. You might have to meet Chewy on the block for your first time or something. But I mean, like, that's part of it, right? Like,
Right,
finding out where to get the source. There's a lot of information in there. Like, hey, is this good quality? How do I know what's good quality? Like, asking yourself all those questions is
right.
part of the search to the healing, at least in my opinion out there. But yeah, you brought up the idea of science, and I want to ask you this question here, and is how do you personally hold the tension between being a scientist bound to rigor and a visionary driven by imagination?
That's also a very good question.
Yes.
Because I don't usually get these sorts of questions. It's a very difficult task, and I think in business, in like the 10 years that I've been in business, I think that in fact is the hardest thing. Is founders and visionary like people who start companies, they have a lot of ideas, right?
Yeah.
And rightfully so, right? I mean, the problem is calibrating the idea that you have and figuring out the pathway to manifest that in the life, right? You could
Yes.
have the idea like, I'm gonna do this big goal, but where are you gonna get the money? Do you even know how much money do you want? Do you even know what it takes? Are you going about it the right way? Are you, do you have the right path? I mean, if you want to go from New York to Los Angeles, there's technically a million ways you could go. You could first go to Russia, and then you
You're
could
right.
go to LA, right? You could go everywhere in the world but LA, and then you could go to LA, or you could go directly to LA, right?
Right.
So the point is that figuring out that path from New York to LA, that's a straight shot, is the real genius, right?
Yeah.
Because in business, unfortunately, people like the people that are going to give you money, they don't give a damn about your idea. They don't give a damn if you're going to save a billion lives. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, they don't give a damn. What they give a damn about is the bottom line. It's about the spreadsheet, it's about the Excel, it's about the numbers. And for people who are visionaries, these people don't do stuff for money. Like yes, we make money, but it's not about the money. I could have made a lot more money doing something else. I had a pretty good career working for Novartis Pharmaceuticals before this, which paid me more. By the way, just if my board or other people are listening. But but yeah, I mean, from that perspective, you have to align with the world, right? And the world
Yeah.
doesn't care about what you come up with, unfortunately. And you have to figure out what that path from New York to LA is.
Yeah, that's well said. I heard my old mentor used to tell me that the ideas are worth pennies, but the execution of the idea is worth millions.
Exactly.
Yeah, it blows my mind to think about. Who do we got over here? I got Clint coming in. Clint says, could microbes become our allies in ways that rewild the planet, where humans and yeast are both co-creators in an ecological symphony?
Absolutely. I think microbes have been allies since day
Yeah.
one, and allies and foes. And like it's like human beings. Like some people are friendly, some are horrible, right? Like beer. Beer is made through
Yeah.
yeast. That is a byproduct of yeast and yogurt and all these things. But I think, yeah, I mean, I think we're getting to a point where we can manufacture and we can dictate how these organisms are going to go out there and what they're going to do. So yes, I think we can live in a place where we would be able to change the earth itself. And I think that's why I say like 500 years to make something like that, like long lasting changes. But I think by that time we will have conquered and figured out, and I think in my imagination at least, dealt with all these things.
Yeah. Me too. Now, I'm curious how working with these yeasts and understanding the relationship they have to each other and how they transmute and how they change things. How has working with that and seeing that process changed your relationships in life? Like, do you get to learn, like, well, look at it does this. Can I apply that to my life?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, no, not yet. Since I started this company, it's sort of taken over my life. Most of my time in what
Mm,
goes into this. It's changed a lot of relationships because
right.
you're too focused on one thing. Um, but it has given me a different perspective. I mean, I do sit, when you go for a family dinner or something, like you go out
Yeah.
with friends and you look at like, a packet of ketchup or something, and there's all these ideas that go through your head, right? Like, interestingly enough, we made you know, food dyes that are antioxidants to replace, let's say a red dye 40, the cancer
Yeah.
molecule. So in that way, yeah, I mean, it's fundamentally shifted my perspective of how I see reality. Like I see reality through the lens of someone who understands that fundamentally things can be changed. But unfortunately, it takes millions and millions of dollars to do that.
Yeah. It's such an intriguing question. Like, I wish that everybody had the ability to find that thing that they love and then see the world through that lens. You know what I mean? Like that would be amazing if people could just tune into that frequency a little more.
Yeah. And funny enough, like, you bring up things you love. This
Yeah,
is what I absolutely love to do, right?
I can tell.
And that's why I'm here 10 years. I mean, we've gone
Yeah,
through ups and downs. There have been months and months on end when we got no salary, right?
yeah,
And that's just a part of, if you love what you do, you're going to stick it out. I think that's very, very important.
yeah. Is that what you would give advice to like young entrepreneurs that were maybe watching or maybe
Yeah.
today, maybe 5 years from now? What other advice would you give them?
I think that's like fundamental advice number one is, if you absolutely don't love, not just love, you have to be obsessed with it. Like, so, when I was with pharma, I was working at Novartis. I had a full-time job. I used to go to work, and then 5 o'clock, you check out, you come home. Normally, people hang out with, like, friends. They go out to a bar. They go out to play a pool or something like that, which is the things I used to do.
Yeah,
But since I came up with this idea, I got obsessed with it. This is all I could think about. And it got to the point that now when I came home, instead of doing all those activities, I started reading scientific literature. I think I read a few thousand papers to, so
yeah,
it became an obsession. I remember my girlfriend at that time was like, "What's wrong with you?" So, and I think every girlfriend since has also said that. Problem, right? Because it's like I said, it's an obsession more than a love. It's an absolute obsession.
Again, my friend Clint Kyle's the Psychedelic Christian Podcast. Everyone should check it out. It's an amazing podcast, and Clint is an amazing human being. He says, I heard over a year ago yeast strains have been developed that produce cannabinoids. What comes to your mind?
Yeah, I mean, we did the cannabis strains 9 years ago, right?
Nice.
There are maybe 5 or 6 different companies that have developed that technology. I know that maybe one or two of them are actually out in the field. But yeah, I mean, look, you can't patent the genes. So let's say there are genes in any organism. In cannabis, there are genes to make cannabinoids. In mushrooms, there are genes to make psilocybin. Those genes are natural genes as they exist in the organism. And you cannot patent natural genes. It's just not possible or allowable, right? So, but what you can patent is you can patent changes you make to that gene that demonstrate that you have made a process more efficient or more valuable. So in that way, there's nothing stopping anybody. Like for example, if you have $10 million, George, and you'd be like, "Hey,
I
I'm
wish.
actually going to invest that 10 million in my new hobby, and
Mm.
I'm going to make strains of yeast to do all these things." So you could also make a strain of yeast that makes cannabinoids and psilocybin. The real key here, in my opinion, is just like the analogy of New York to LA, is when you make a yeast or a process, the ultimate goal is to make it cheaper and more pure than the original process. If you're using genes that are so inefficient that now it's even more expensive than what it takes normally, then what's the point? So when we have patents, like we don't patent the ability to do something, we patent our modifications that we have spent millions of dollars and years of time learning that actually make the process more efficient. So yes, anybody could theoretically do it.
Yeah, it's a great question, Clint. Thank you. Who do we got coming on here? Desiree. Here comes Desiree from Palm Desert. She says, when you brew psilocybin or LSD in a lab, are you simply replicating the molecules or are you changing the very mythology of psychedelics themselves?
Also a great question. I like your viewers.
I get the best audience in the world, man.
I think it's both, and I think the
Okay.
second part of the mythology is yet to fully change. That thing is yet to fully be realized because we're just so early in this inception, right?
Yeah.
Uh, One of the projects that we're working on is looking at classic psychedelics, like LSD is one that we developed, right? LSD in yeast. Now, one of the big problems with LSD that everybody I know who does LSD says to me is that, man, it generally just lasts too long. And I think most people who have done LSD will agree to that. And I do too, right? So
Yeah.
the idea is, could you make a version of LSD that only lasts 8 hours, but it's the exact same thing? So yeah, we are actually working on that particular project and we're looking at. I mean, it's obviously going to take a while to figure out, but the idea is to take classic psychedelics and see if there are any harmful or undesirable traits of those, and to be able to engineer those out. But I think that's going to take a while. But if we're able to successfully do that, then I think we change, the very connection humanity has with psychedelics. In fact, interestingly enough, I was watching some program on TV, and they were talking about back in the ancient Greek days. There's some fish in the Mediterranean Sea. It's got these bright stripes. I can't remember the name of the fish, but apparently, if you take that fish, you have hallucinations for up to 36 hours, and a lot of it is undesirable. And I was really fascinated with that. That to get this effect, we are willing to go through all these undesirable effects, right? So but it's that important, right? I mean, it's that important to humanity as a collective that we will take substances even though there is a lot of discomfort, but we will continue doing it, right? So there's obvious value. Now, if you fundamentally change that to where it's mostly positive, the question that I have is, does that fundamentally change, that paradigm and that relationship? Because in some ways, some bad things are also good things, right?
Yeah.
Maybe part of the healing that you get is part of the bad trip that I don't know. I mean, I don't think anybody really knows the answer to that question. But in that way, that's why I keep coming back to the idea that I think everything has a place, right?
Yes.
I don't think that if you can produce psilocybin in the lab, you should only take that. I think, and vice versa, right? I mean, I think there may be situations where you would want to eat the mushrooms, right? There may be other situations where you just may want to take a pill that has some psilocybin in a controlled way. So I think you know it it really depends, but no, that's a very interesting thought. Is like if we can make psychedelics and things without any bad effects, then there may be a generation of people that have never gone through that discomfort that was associated with traditional psychedelics.
Yeah, I'm with you there, man. I think, if you just look at classic mythology, there's always the ordeal before the revelation. And I think
Right.
that ordeal is necessary. Like, yeah, it's hard. And like that's why you need the courage to do psychedelics. Like
Right.
look, you might be in this place for 12 hours, man, depending on how much you do. You might lose your ability to talk. Like that's a huge psychological juggernaut. But I think it's important, and like I'm not a scientist by any means, but in my personal opinion, I think that bad part is necessary because it forces you to simulate the dangerous parts of life or the scary parts of life or the parts you're depressed or anxiety that have that anxiety. And I don't know that you would get the same effects if you just only got the good. That's like saying I want to go through life but not experience any trauma. I don't think that they work like that, man. But that's just my opinion. What do you
Right.
think?
So let's complicate this a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, so think about the time when penicillin was invented, right?
Okay.
So penicillin is an antibiotic that kills germs and it can save your life. Before penicillin, people usually used to die of bacterial infections, and it was a very serious thing. Penicillin was accidentally discovered by someone who had moldy bread left out, and I think somebody ate the moldy bread, and then the infection went away, and then one guy who was smart enough put two and two together, like maybe this mold is what's killing or doing this, and that's how it came about.
Right.
But also think about this, right? If we were to say like, okay, penicillin kills germs, so every time somebody has an infection, we have to just eat moldy bread, right? I mean, so in that way, the paradigm, I don't think there is a right answer here, right? But I think of it that way, right? In one way,
Right.
I like, yeah, maybe the trauma is necessary. Maybe the whole thing is part of your experience to get that integration into reality. But on the other side,
Right.
is it right? I mean, I'm glad that they figured out how to make pills, and so I don't
Yeah.
have to, culture mold in my house and like do all of that, right? Again, like it's a very interesting thought for sure.
Yeah. And I think it speaks volumes too of people that might be in a coma or people that, have a severe injury. Maybe they need the neuroplasticity of psychedelics, but they don't need to see all the visions of like their mom beating them when they were 12 or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
It's fascinating to think of. It's so much fun. Who do we got over here? I got my friend Betsy. What's up, Betsy from Oceanside, my old hometown? She says, "What do you think ancient shamans would say if they saw microbes brewing their sacred medicines?"
So I think they would be fascinated. I think they would be intrigued
Right?
because the point of doing a ceremony and all that is ultimately the goal is to heal people, right?
Yes.
How you do it, if you can effectively do it a different way, then that way is also a valid
Right.
way, right? So I think they would be fascinated with it. And personally, I think if they saw that there was something easier and more efficient, and sometimes people didn't die, right? I mean, a lot of people, when they go through, some people die through these
Yeah.
ayahuasca and other ceremonies. So if you can come up with a way that can can fix that, I think it would be a good thing. I mean, like I said, I mean, like the usage of drugs, where I think there should be a full spectrum. I think also for processes, I think in some cases it's the right thing is to go through a ceremony with a shaman. In other
Sure.
cases, it might be something you do on your own, right? And everything in between. So I think it's important to have um, sort of a broad view.
Yeah. I think so too. It would be interesting to see it. And yeah, who else do I got over here? This one, no name on this one, but they say if biology is the new manufacturing, what do you think happens to craft, the human art of making?
I think the two are mutually exclusive,
Right?
in my opinion. I think handcrafts and things that we do are different. But this biology is for, I would say, for making products that are difficult to make, right? So, for
Yes.
example, if you were to buy pure ibogaine for clinical trials, right, it's about $250,000 a kilogram, right?
It's
Uh,
crazy.
if you buy, let's say, psilocybin from like the government registered authority, it's $6,000 a gram. Who can afford that? I mean, why
Nobody.
are there not more clinical trials and stuff? I mean, part of that is obviously the legal regulations, which
Right.
I don't think should exist the way they are at all. But the other part is just because the prices, right?
Yep.
So, if you can make a product that can actually allow access, right? So if I can make something for $10,000 a kilo that's in the market for 250, then more people are likely to buy it, which means in my mind, the healing is going to spread. Yeah, maybe it's not 100% healing like a professional ceremony, but how many people can really
Right.
get on a plane for 3 weeks, travel to the middle of the jungle, and afford like $10,000 doing that? Not many people.
Yeah.
Does that mean that they don't have the right to be healed? Does that mean that we shouldn't, if we have something that's even half as effective that they could buy for a few $100 and they could do it in their own home, that's not worth it, right? So, in that way, I think things hopefully will change.
Yeah. Me too. It's so unaffordable for so many people, and it seems like the people that need it the most are the people that don't have the resources.
Yeah. I was actually on another podcast in the Dominican Republic. I was going through the Dominican Republic 3 months ago, 4 months ago, and I got on a podcast, and it was at a 5-MeO DMT retreat center. So
Nice.
I was there, for a few days, and
Perfect.
we do podcasts, and then they asked me the same thing, and like, don't you think, this way is better than the other lab made method? And I'm like, I don't disagree, right? But how many people can afford to even come to your retreat?
Yep.
Number one. How many people can you even accommodate, right? How many years or hundreds, if not thousands of years, would it take to put the whole world through something like this? So, on the flip side, if you can make this and you can distribute it widely, you can make it cheap and accessible, I think that will make a more rapid shift.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, I'm gonna merge the scientist in you and the imagination in you. And here's this question: Is okay? Imagine it's the year 2050, and CB Therapeutics has fulfilled its wildest dreams. What does a day in that world look like for an ordinary person?
Well, I mean, I think the caveat here is that the DEA chilled out. So, assuming the DEA chilled out and there was less drug regulation, I think that would look like that we have. Sorry, I'm just going to close this window.
Yeah, man, take your time, man.
The trash collector is coming. It's going to be noisy. But in that world, we would have produced almost every psychedelic using this technology and allowing for the DEA to let us distribute it. We would be able to bring every molecule that has healing properties for a fraction of the cost of what you're paying today. I mean, that was the original goal of the company, was to democratize access to these things.
Yeah,
We started making CBD. CBD was like $50,000 a kilogram. How many people can afford something like that, right? So
nobody.
exactly. So the idea was to make things cheap, affordable, pure, and
Yeah,
accessible. So if by 2050 the DEA chills out, then yeah, I think we would be in a position where we've made predominantly every drug you could think of, and we have produced a market where it's going to be pure, and it's going to be cheap and affordable and accessible.
yeah, I love that, man. I can't wait for that to happen. Like, you got any thoughts on like my personal opinion is that like I love the psychedelic renaissance and I want the healing for everyone who wants to try it or has the courage to try it or can find a modality in there somewhere. Like, and I see so much growth there. But it seems to me psychedelic the psychedelic movement is a lot like mycelium and that it's always underground and only every now and then does it come above ground and then you see people like start pitching their tents and selling access and then it goes away again.
Right.
For me there just seems like so much there's just so much of the regulations and the laws and the politics and the money behind the scenes. I don't see how it can stay above ground without dying. It seems like it comes in cycles to me, the same way mycelium does. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we're close to having that breakthrough. And what I
Good.
mean by that is that the momentum, I think, is slowly building, and I think
Yeah.
it might cross a threshold. I think so. One of the things I look at is the number of drugs that are in clinical trials, what stage they're at, and that ultimately determines sort of like the viability of psychedelics to the world. So I know that psilocybin is in phase 3 with Compass Pathways. The moment that happens, I think that's going to be a very big milestone for psychedelics. Another milestone that happened recently was in the news was Gilgamesh Pharmaceuticals, a
Mm.
company I know, uh, and their drug was licensed by big pharma for 1.2 billion. The
Ooh.
first time something like that has happened. So I think we're almost at the cusp. I think within the next 2 years, there's going to be big movement in psychedelics. In my opinion, again, this is just my opinion.
Yeah, I love it, man. I'm bullish on it. I want it to happen. Who do we got over here? Rivera's coming in, and they said, sure. If yeast can be taught to make psilocybin, CBD, or LSD, what does that teach us about the untapped intelligence of life itself?
It teaches us that anything is possible, right? I mean, here's, I mean, y- we are we human beings have come to the point that now we are playing God. I mean, we've been doing it for many years. Agriculture was sort of like the start of that,
Yeah,
and we've taken that far to like now airplanes and satellites and medicine and AI and I don't think that the time is far where we're literally going to control every aspect of our existence, minus the human condition itself, right? I mean,
mm,
as we have more and more control over life, paradoxically, we are more and more depressed. Which is a very interesting thing, right? I mean, I think that is the thing that we're gonna not be able to have an answer for, is the human condition itself. But outside of that, I think we'll be able to take care of everything.
that's a great point, and I didn't think about it from that angle. But yeah, it seems like the more we control, the more we lose our, the more we it almost sounds like a lack of spirituality on some level. Like we're seeing controlling all these things, and maybe we're so caught up in this idea of control or something. We have like this absence of spirituality. What's your relationship to spirituality? What do you think?
I'm a spiritual person. I don't really subscribe to one thing or another, but I find it fascinating that at the end of the day, I don't know anybody. I don't think anybody really knows what's actually going on, right?
Yeah,
Which is like
yeah.
like you hear people like this is what happens after death, and I'm like, dude, were you there? Were you there, bro? Like how I don't think anybody knows. Like I think we
Yeah,
all have our speculations and like whatnot, but I don't think anybody really knows. And the question and the point is, why do we care what happens anyways? We're here to do our time, and then that's that. What happens after that is none of our business. So live in the present. Try to you know be happy, do good in the time that we have. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see that. Yeah, who knows? Like, what happens or what could happen?
yeah. It's interesting to see. I always get caught up with like the people that are like it's the end of times, and then I think to myself like, you know what? You're gonna get your own front row seat to it. But the chances of you being here when we all go, it's pretty thin. You know what I mean?
I
It's
think it would be kind of exciting. It's to the brain, to the mundane life itself. Like, for
yeah,
example, you heard about, the Three Eye Atlas, that
yeah,
comet thing, and then now they're like, oh, it might be like aliens, or they said that about Oumuamua before this, and I was like, dude, I hope it's the fucking aliens. Sorry, guys, I don't need to say that. I
yeah.
hope
Go ahead, man.
because honestly, like life itself is whatever. Like you may have the best career, you may have like the best life, but the end of the day is the same crap, right? You have
Yeah,
to wake up at a certain time, you have to get your coffee, not be late, pay your taxes, do this, be a certain way. I mean, at some in a certain way it's boring, in a certain way it's predictable, in a certain
yeah,
way in a certain way, the worst thing that could happen. I don't know who said this, but in some movie is the worst thing that could happen to you is you're just average or ordinary, right? The worst thing that could happen is to live an ordinary life. So So my buddy was like, "Oh, I don't know if it's the aliens." I have a lot of. I mean, I'm a conspiracy
Yeah,
theorist
me too, man.
in many ways. Some I have learned not to believe anymore, like the flat Earth thing. But there's others that I'm into. But I was almost like, I hope it's the aliens. Like, I mean, that would be the most exciting thing. I we need like some sort of jolt.
I feel like we're the aliens. You know,
We're,
if you start, like that's what I go down, man. Like if you think about it, like I go out in the, I go out in the sun, I get all burned, man. We're taking all the resources from the planet. Like you could make a pretty good argument for like, dude, we're the aliens. We're the ones over here doing this. You know, we don't even know what's going on half the time.
we're like the cancer, right? Like we're basically extracting everything, and it's like the
Yeah,
part of the matrix, right? I mean, that's what the AI said is you guys are like the cancer, and we are the cure, right?
yeah,
Speaking of that, I mean, that's why AI scares me a little bit, right? It's like, it is unpredictable. I think people don't fundamentally realize that. The people who realize that they know this, I think they're just too greedy. They're just like, okay, I don't care where humanity goes as long as I become a billionaire and et cetera, et cetera. But speaking of that, yeah, I do worry how where things, excuse me, are going to go with AI. Like now they're making machines that like automated robots that are like warriors and those other dogs, and they put sniper rifles on them and all kinds of drones and stuff. It's like this is a very this is too dangerous. I mean, one could argue that fundamentally about even having a nuclear bomb, right? I mean,
right.
but I think we have invented 1,001 ways to kill other people, and every day it just becomes more efficient, more deadly. I mean, where is this going, right?
Yeah, yeah, man. Like everything we do, it's usually for. You could probably say that the majority of our R&D is for weapons. Like everything is for a weapon. Ultimately, when you start digging into it, oh, they're doing this for military research. But then there's some cool stuff that comes out of it later down the line when they turn it over to like, well, I guess you could be healthier.
Favorite food products that came out of the war budget was actually Cheetos. Cheetos was invented to, well, a form of it was invented to like be like a long lasting food for like soldiers, and then somebody did, obviously a few modifications to it, and then now we have Cheetos.
I had no idea. I
Yeah.
had no idea. Who do I got over here? Leon, what's cracking, Leon? I hope your day's beautiful, my friend. He says, when you look at the four challenges CB Therapeutics addresses, do you see them as separate problems or as a single living system that fermentation can harmonize?
Good, good question. So I think the way I see it is I try to approach every industry independently, right?
Right.
So, for example, cannabis and psychedelics, we're doing projects there. We one day we found out that through the news that red dye 40 and others have been shown to cause cancer, and they're putting it in M&Ms and I love M&Ms and candy,
Mm,
you know,
me
obviously
too.
all these kinds of foods, and I was like, wow, this is horrible. Like, I mean, you're putting in literally a cancerous product knowing it causes cancer. So we're like, you know what, why don't we you know figure something out? So what we did is we took the colors from things like beets, tomatoes, carrots, and those happen to be antioxidants, by the way, the color themselves, the pigment, and we replicated those, and we made those products in yeast. Now, you know what the problem though is?
What?
The problem is the companies don't want to buy it,
Mm,
even though it's cancer. It's like healthy for you because of like it's going to be more expensive than the cheap, red dye 40 that they were going to use. So ultimately, I think that's one of the problems you
yeah.
face is you invent or you make something that is good for people or is good for the environment, but businesses don't care. They have all these campaigns about saving this, doing that, paying. It's all a PR campaign. It's all marketing. There's literally no substance behind it.
Yeah. There's a great quote that says, if you don't have a seat at the table, then you're on the menu.
That's a good one. Have a seat at the table, then you're on the menu. I love it.
What about so if we think about this process, if maybe not the exact process you're doing now, but is there a way to get like maybe kids involved? Like could there be a day when children learn to like brew the future in school, like turning sugar into molecules instead of code? You think there's a process kids could do at maybe like a elementary school? Is there something they could do to start learning this aspect to kind of get them in the right frame of mind, or maybe see a future in biotech?
I think I think one of the earlier things to do would be to educate kids on biology in general earlier
Yeah,
on. I think biology has come a long way, and mostly so in like the last 50 or 100 years. In fact, I think the curriculum is maybe a little not as updated. I mean, we've updated the curriculum from the perspective of adding new definitions, adding new
right.
diagrams, and going into detail. But I think you need to fundamentally step back and look at what the broader implication could be and how you can stitch that narrative, like for even for kids earlier, right? I mean, you could
Yeah,
have children's storybooks that just like they have kids storybooks to learn how to code. You probably see those things, right? Like learn how to teach your child coding from an early age. You could have one about biology or biotech that can have kids imagine. I think the biggest thing is to have an imagination, right?
yeah,
I think that's, if you're a drug user of any sorts, you definitely have an overactive imagination. So in
yeah,
that way, I don't think drugs are necessarily bad. I mean, assuming you are a responsible user and you can, find something that's clean and pure and whatnot. So, but also having kids have the imagination that, one day I could make an AI program or I could program and do this. It could be one day I could, make a new medicine, right?
yeah.
One day I could make, a bacteria that can eat plastic or something like that, right? I mean, that's definitely something we can integrate.
Yeah, that brings up another question for me. Like when we talk about drug development or drug discovery, it seems like your process could be at the front of that too. Like, creating like next gen psychedelics or next gen, whatever, next gen whatever. I think that could be an aspect of it too.
Yeah, so that's primarily what we do. So, for example, we have a partnership with a public pharmaceutical company called Atai Life Sciences.
Oh, they're crushing in the market right now.
Yeah, they are our partners for like 5 years. Their
Yeah, yeah.
CEO actually sits on our board. Very nice guy, amazing guy. He's
I should
got
talk
three,
to him.
he's got 3 degrees, all from Yale, right? So you can imagine, the
Right.
caliber of a person like that, right? Amazing guy. So they are a public company. They do clinical trials. So we do the back end development where, we'll try to make unique pharmaceuticals or psychedelics, or if a current one is too expensive or too hard to obtain, or there are purity issues and things like that. So I think, you know, as much as I am a proponent for the gray market on a personal level, from a professional level, I think that definitely, the fact that companies are going down the road of doing actual clinical trials and doing it in a very rigorous manner, I think it's a good thing. Um, because a lot of things, uh, the pharmaceutical process, as bad as it may be, and I think it's bad not because of the process itself or what it makes. I think it's bad because of the greed behind, the
Yeah,
management in some ways and the investors. I mean, that's ultimately the bad thing. The whole that doesn't make the whole process bad, right? I mean, we've
right.
got a lot of great treatments and like advancements in science, and we've saved hundreds of millions of lives because of the work that pharmaceutical companies do. But ultimately, the problem is the management and sort of like the greed behind it, right? So if we could separate that, I think that would be an interesting thing. And I think you know, I'm happy to see like these new clinical trials in pop up, and even for our companies, it's a very very long process to get DEA
Yeah.
approval. I mean, if the DEA fundamentally changed its stance, that would, in my opinion, be the biggest change that there can happen in this industry by far.
Yeah. Yeah. I
I
wonder
don't
if there's a
know, to
relationship
be honest, but
between like the greed aspect of the investors and the corporations and the that which they measure in clinical trials, because it seems to me clinical trials are lacking in so many of the intangibles that we don't thoroughly know how to measure. You know what I mean by that? Like like someone like the tears of a veteran who no longer is depressed, like the tears of the wife of a veteran who's no longer depressed, like that's evidence. Like that's solid evidence. Like when the wife begins to see, oh my God, it's working again. But how do you measure that if the biomarkers don't measure that? Like, do you think there's a relationship there, or can we? Do you think we can start moving into clinical trials that begin to measure some of these more subjective ideas?
So I think, yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, if somebody feels better, it works, right? But
Yeah.
ultimately, if you think about it, placebo works about 34% of the time. Right?
True. Yeah,
It-
without a doubt.
so, so there has to be a qualitative differentiation between things that you can just be cured because of a placebo and things that really, like, if you have a deadly bacterial infection, you could feel all the positivity in the world, you're probably going to die, right? So
Right.
I think it's a very complex question, and for complex questions you need complex and differentiated solutions, and there's never usually one
Right.
solution. And I think that's the thing, right? I mean, when we look at pharmaceutical companies or these ideas of how a drug should be administered, what is evidence, these are very, very complicated and complex situations that unfortunately never have one answer. And I think
Yeah.
that is sort of like the key to understanding and navigating these fields, is to have that broad mindset, right? Which I was saying earlier, like for example, I'm a proponent of psychedelics because I've done a lot of psychedelics.
Yes.
My primary motivation. So I understand that whole side of it. And most of the psychedelics I've done have not been in the clinical setting, right? But having said that, I think there's definitely a place for that. I think, we could advance this even further. The ultimate goal is to heal people and make them feel well. So why is this not a way? In that way, like I said, there's some times where you just want to do something in your
Yeah.
backyard with some, Jimi Hendrix playing in the background or whatever, right? Whatever you're into. But on the other side, you may want to be in a clinical setting to go through a specific sort of
Yeah.
trauma and have guided, whole thing. So I think there's a room and a space for both of these situations.
Yeah. I agree. It's
And
so
even on the
interesting.
pharma side, it's not a pharma specific problem. I mean, look
Right.
at any corporation. There is greed. There is all
Of
these
course.
things that are happening, and I would almost say this is a human condition.
Agreed.
Greed is a human condition. Just like, in every, politics, for example. I don't want to jump into politics, but I'll say something. So
Yeah.
one thing about me is that I'm an immigrant to the U.S. I moved here 20 years ago, and on a student visa, and then I went through the process, and then I just got my citizenship about 4 years ago. I'm from Pakistan originally. My family still lives there, so I moved here by myself. I live by myself here, but I'm very fascinated to see over the years, having friends from different political ideologies, and the most interesting thing I find about politics is this: you turn on one TV channel that's pro one side, they will frame the whole world in
Yeah.
a way where that is the thing. And whatever actually happens in reality, they will frame it as a good thing. You turn on the other type of TV channel, they have a whole new frame. And what I find very interesting is it's not what actually happens,
Yeah.
it's about how you're framing it. So no matter
Yeah.
what happens or how anything happens, the framework and how they paint the story changes everything. So, so in that way, I think greed plays into it from the perspective that whenever you have a lot of power and money involved, you have a lot of bad actors. There's just no way to avoid it, right? I mean, and politicians, I think, are the worst. I think they're I mean, they're the most trained liars, or what you want to call it. I don't think they really care about anybody. They're just taking narratives to move further, and it's, how do you root that out, right? Unfortunately, you can't, almost, right? I mean, how can you do that? I mean, and I think that's the same thing. There's a position of power, there's a company that can do this. People that are bad actors, that you can try to stop them, but they will try to get up there.
That's exactly why I think everything goes back underground, man. Like,
Right.
I remember back in like the 60s, Art Linkletter's daughter jumped out of a window and they were like, that's LSD. And then everything got shut down. So my listeners are gonna probably be like, shut up, George. But I'm just saying my piece over here. Like, all it takes is for one really connected, powerful donor for something bad to happen to that kid. He tells
Right.
the politician and everything goes away. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, And I don't want to be, I'm sorry I'm being negative after I always people shut up about that, George. But like I don't know. I think it's worthy of knowing. But I guess the way we would change it, at least in my opinion, and like I see psychedelics as a tool for self-discovery. And I'm privileged in that I don't maybe have the conditions where I need to go see someone and I can do the psychedelics and I've built my own relationship with them. But I think when each individual takes finds an altered state of awareness where they can understand what they're truly capable of, I think that's where the change comes from. It comes from the bottom up. And then they say what culture is or politics is downstream from culture. So if we
Right.
can create that culture and each individual begins to step into who they really are, I think that's the big change, man. Is that too optimistic?
I would say yes on a practical level. And the
Yeah.
reason is this is
Okay.
I feel like there are different types of people in the world, right? I was just reading a quote which says that, it's something along the lines of some people are not put here to actually, make a change. They're here to remind you that if you don't change, this is what you will become, right? So in that
Yeah.
way, not everybody has the intention to do right. And this is one of the other things you learn in life and in business and in relationships is you may be coming at it from like a open heart, good intention, sort of a putting your best foot forward. But the other party, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a business deal, may not. I mean, their MO from day one might be, yeah, I'm gonna get the contract signed and then screw this other party over. And the whole time they've been thinking that, or that other partner
Yeah.
in a dating situation might be like, oh, I'm gonna take him for what he's got, kind of a thing. And from day one, and then they play that game, right? So
Yeah.
I think in that way, not everybody is playing the same game. And because we're not playing the same game, it's going to be very difficult, in my opinion.
That's well said. It's naive on my part, but it comes from a good spot, sure. Who do I got over here? Oscar, what's cracking, my friend? Hope your day's beautiful. He says if microbes can be programmed to create abundance, could they also be taught to create beauty, art, and music?
Uh, Maybe, yeah. I think so because I mean they've done interesting things. Like for example, they've connected some like these like sensors to mushrooms, and
Yeah.
mushrooms you can hear the music, right? Maybe you've seen that. They've created like art pieces that use microbes in a sense. The question really is are the microbes really aware of that, right?
Mm-mm.
And the question is to make art, does one have to be aware that they're making art? Like, they have this elephant somewhere, and the elephant paints. I swear to God, like, and it makes really nice paintings. But the question is, does the elephant really understand, like, what exactly is happening, right? I mean, and that art is sold on the internet, and people, buy it and they understand it like that. So it's a very subjective question because
Yeah.
on one side as humanity we say like, okay, to have a nervous system to be conscious, you need to have these things to like really know what's going on, right? But on another level, on a quantum mechanics side, they say that every object itself has consciousness. That's the awareness of itself. So the question is, where is that line of being able to understand? I don't think there's an answer to this. This is one of those questions, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, the most important questions in life are ones that nobody has an answer to,
Yeah.
right? This is just one of those things. But yeah, I think it's definitely a very interesting rabbit hole to get down.
Yeah. I like where you're going with there, Oscar. I found as I get older, man, like I don't know anything. I don't have any answers, but I can come up with better questions. It
Okay,
seems like there's always better questions, but there's never really answers.
absolutely, absolutely,
Nice. Well, I got one more over here for you, man. You okay on time for another question? We're over an hour already.
absolutely,
O-
absolutely.
Okay, cool. Let's see what we got over here. This one is coming from when we brew. This one's pretty cool. A shout out to Camila. Camila says, when we brew mental health compounds in a lab, are we merely replicating nature or rewriting the map?
I think a little bit of both, right?
Right.
And that's also subjective. Like the initial effort is to replicate what nature has, because we know that's what works. I mean,
Right.
think about like, I mean, shout out to the first human beings like hundreds of thousands of years ago that did the mushrooms, and then they were
Yeah.
like, oh, "This is some good stuff," right? They kept doing it, and like the ones that discovered cannabis and all these drugs, because think about it, like back then, you took a random berry, sometimes it worked, and sometimes you were dead, right?
Totally.
or paralyzed or something, right? But after doing these things for a long time, human beings figured out like, okay, these are the things. If you have these conditions that you can go to, you do this and it works. But ultimately, the point of doing it, see, with everything, you have to come back to what is the purpose. And this is something I learned going through therapy. Is what they say is, what is the purpose? Okay, I'll start a business. What is the purpose? Oh, I'll do something significant, or I'll make money. What is the purpose of that? You keep asking yourself that question with every answer you get, and five or six answers later, you actually find out the real purpose, which is an interesting practice to do. So ultimately, what people were trying to do back in the day, and they're still doing to this day, is to either relax or to figure out or fix an issue, right? So if we're able to figure out how to cure a disease without having to eat moldy bread, then I think it's going in the right direction. But I think it's still subjective.
Yeah, it is. Sure. Who are some of the people that you admire and that who are some of the people you admire and why?
Uh, well, the first one would probably be, I would say, Marcus Aurelius,
Mm,
Stoic philosopher, probably my favorite person if I had to think one. Why? Because I think they called him the man who solved the universe in some ways, and I think it's a lot of the human things that we in the modern world suffer from today were figured out a long time ago, right? Like we figured out greed was bad, right? And be just, have a
yeah.
sense of doing right, karma, and all these things. Be busy on your health, be busy on like these things. And I think once we forgot those things again, then a lot of miseries come, right? So I think he would probably be top of my list. Other people that I can think of. The second person would probably be Napoleon, the general, because he's just got a very fascinating. So I'm fascinated by people that have a lot of grit and determination despite the circumstances, because I feel like my situation was kind of like that. I
Yeah.
was on a student visa. Cannabis was illegal back then, still is federally. It was illegal even in the state. I mean, I started this company in 2016, and I used to go around to investors, and they were like, "Dude, this is totally illegal. Why are we right?" So, but no, but it's the persistence and determination one has, and now I'm here, right? So, I think he embodies that in many ways. So those are the types of people I admire. People that have depth to them, right? People that are, not just surface level, like, hey, what did Katy Perry do tomorrow, or whatever. I don't even really subscribe to mainstream culture in that way. I have previously, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just think that there's so many uh, deep things one can be involved with, that these are things just seem shallow, right?
Yeah.
So I think psychedelics has really helped me in that way
Yes.
too. And for most people, is you kind of disconnect with reality itself, like this matrix sort of a thing that we're living in. This go get a job, go to school, get the biggest house, get the biggest car, get the Xbox and this and that, and it's easy to get into that, right? But if
Yeah.
psychedelics are a very powerful tool that allow you to really disconnect, step back, and kind of see the whole picture. And that's something I'm grateful for, is to be able to be reckless enough to do all these things in some ways, right? But
Yeah.
but it all works together. And I'll end this with the quote that by Marcus Aurelius, and he says, "If you observe carefully, everything happens as it should." And on a surface level, it's like, okay, dude, whatever. But on a deeper angle, what I think it means is that reality is a certain way. but the unfortunate thing is most people don't see reality the way it is. They have all these filters and all these things which distorts it, and then you try something or the understanding of something and you don't get the desired result. The problem is not the effort that you're making or whatever. The problem is you didn't correctly identify the problem or
Mhm.
see it for what it is, right? And that obviously means that you couldn't have come up with the right solution, right? You see something where really, really far away in the distance, 5 miles from now, you think it's like a circular object, so you create a net that's circular, but then it comes out to be a rectangle, right? So in that way, I think and this is what psychedelics I think helps people too with, is to cut those filters loose and to try to observe reality as close as possible. I don't think anybody can see it completely for what it is. We are human beings and we're designed to have filters and these things. It's a part of survival, right?
Yeah.
Like helping people and all this stuff. But consciously, the more of these filters you can, get rid of, I think the closer you have the ability to see that, and the less disappointing things are because you can sort of see what it is for what it is.
Oh, blowing up over there. Um, yeah, it blows my mind to think about that aspect of seeing reality clearly. It makes me think of like the default mode network. Like when we see these
Right,
brain scans from psilocybin, you got the default mode network, and then all of a sudden there's other connections, and
right,
maybe some of these cut out. And when I think of culture, I feel like it has this default mode network for you. Hey, you want to follow the default mode network, then you go to school, you go here, you get this degree, you get this job, you buy this house, you get these two kids, and then like that's sort of the default mode network, which isn't bad. I mean, it
right.
works, but it seems like it's working less and less for people.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason is there's just new things come up. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
look at like 200 years ago, if you were like a glassmaker, that was like the hottest job, or
yeah,
like a sword forger or something like that. I mean, those things don't exist today, right?
yeah,
you know, 50 years ago, it was like be a doctor, right? Now that's changing. Now it's about be, an AI encoder or something like that. So I think through the perspective of time, things completely change.
yeah. When sometimes I'll look at the conspiracies or I'll just look at the news, and it's so easy to get caught up, like you said, in some of the thinking. But maybe it's not that we're super evil. Maybe it's that we're just new. Maybe we're just figuring it out. You know what I mean? Like that's a way better lens to look at it through. At least it has been for me.
And I think that's what it is. I mean, we are learning. I mean, in the
Yeah,
time scale of like humanity and life, this is just like a blip, right? But
yeah,
for us, it seems like forever, right? There's another quote that I read yesterday was, the days are long, but the decades are short,
yeah,
right? And if you think about it, it's the same for my life, right? Like I mean, every day is like, oh, at this time you get up. There's some days where you're just like, oh my god, this is still got this. But like when I think back, I'm 38, right? So I think back, I'm like, I'm already 38. Like like
yeah,
that way, like time flies. Like in the long perspective, right? Like it just felt like yesterday I was in high school, right? And
yeah,
now I'm here, and now I'm like, wow, like this is probably what life is like. You keep like aging, but when you look back on it, it just seems like an instant.
yeah. It's so true. It's so true. Sure, you are really fun to talk to, man. Thanks for hanging out
Likewise,
with me.
likewise.
This is awesome, man. Okay,
Yeah,
let's do some more in the future, man. Maybe we can bring a panel together, but let's definitely have some more conversations, man.
I'm open to it. Like I
Okay.
mean, cool. I like it. I like the direction, and it's just very speakeasy. So your audience has great questions. So give me a shout out anytime.
All right. Well, say someone's listening right now and they're like, man, I want to talk to Sher. He is pretty cool to talk to. Or I want to learn more about his research. Where can people go to find out about you, your research, or what you got coming up?
So I don't really use social media, I have
Smart
a
move.
social media presence just for like as a business owner that I have somebody's, but I don't. I make it a point to not scroll through social media or something.
Yeah.
I'm a little out of that whole scene, but I have a website cbthera.com, and you can go and check out what I do. If you want to reach at me, you can always email me. It's Sher at cbthera.com. I'm happy to have a discussion if somebody wants to have one. But those would be the two ways.
Fantastic. The great Clint Kyles again says, great conversation. Clint, you have a great podcast. Everyone should check him out. Cher, thank you so much for being here. Hang on briefly afterwards, but to everybody within the sound of my voice, thank you so much for being here. We got the greatest audience in the world. Thank you for participating. I hope everyone has a beautiful day. That's all we got. Aloha.